Salam and peace. This is Imam Malik Mujahid, and you're watching Muslim Network TV. Muslim Network TV is there on Galaxy 19 satellite, covering United States, Canada, and Mexico. Full coverage. 57 million are subscribers of Galaxy 19 satellite. We're also on Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, Roku, and a whole lot of social media. We're 24/7. We produce 8 hours of fresh programming repeated 3 times. And you can always find us on our own website, which is muslimnetwork.tv. Right, muslimnetwork.tv. Today we'll be talking about a different place, not America. But something happened in America which brought it right here. 50,000 Indian Americans, they showed up in Houston late last year. It was called Howdy Modi, welcoming Modi in Houston. And Trump also showed up. He saw a lot of people and they were hand in hand, and that became a news all over the country. Now, Modi is Prime Minister of India. India is the second largest population in the whole world. And it's an important place. But while he became Prime Minister, before that, he was banned from entering America for 10 years because certain American law does not require that people entering America should not have a human right violation record, and he was accused of killing Muslims, a couple of thousand of them, and writing in his state, which he was chief minister in India. And that became a news here when he was welcomed, to the level that one of the leading progressive presidential candidate then, Senator Bernie Sanders, he wrote an op-ed in the Houston Chronicle criticizing Modi. And at the same time, more than 100,000 people signed a petition asking Bill Gates of Microsoft, well, in those days he was chairman, I guess, of the board, he no longer, that not to award Modi. He was being honored for building hundreds and thousands of toilets in India, and he was being honored to keep that promise. So that became another news, and people delivering petition to Bill Gates Foundation, and they still went ahead and awarded him. So it remained in the news. And then he declared that, some laws in India which discriminate against Muslims in the citizenship and demand papers, which most of the Indians, disregard of what faith they are in, it will be difficult for them to produce. Something which happens in Burma, give us the papers of your grandfather's birth certificate. Majority of the Burmese will have to leave Burma if it is asked of everyone, but they just ask Muslims, and it is complicated law, but that amount to that same thing. Then he reinvaded Kashmir, which was already in his control with the army, and locked up people and things like that. So it became in the news, and people are worried about it, and they're writing about that. But here is a blogger who's of Indian heritage. He likes us to think that there is hope, and not everybody voted for Modi actually is a Hindu nationalist, and he didn't get the majority of the vote. We will talk about that, but let me explain some terminologies. So you will hear the name Modi repeatedly. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is his full name. He is the Prime Minister of India at this moment, and he has been since 2014. You will hear a term BJP. It is an acronym for Bharatiya Janata Party. which is the party which controls the government right now. You might hear the term RSS, which is stand for Rashtriya Swayam Sevak Sangh. It's a large paramilitary organization which was established in uh, a little more than a century ago, at the time when fascist organizations were being built, and their founder appreciated fascism. And they are paramilitary in some sense, and they are accused of sort of running a semi government operations there and beating up people that they don't like. So our guest says there is hope, and the people who voted for him are not all Hindu nationalists. And it is the weakness of the opposition which caused all of that. So title of his article, which got my attention, was Hindu Nationalism in India Ain't as Popular as You Think It Is. But then he is subheading, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. So you hear little bit of Americana here, Dr. King. So our guest is Kesh Anand. Welcome to Muslim Network TV.
Thank you, Imam. Good to be here.
Yes, I realize in Australia it is late in the evening, and thank you so much for remaining up for us.
No worries. I had a bit of extra coffee today to keep me going.
Well, if I have a little bit of coffee, I'll be dancing all night. He's online social commentator. He blogs at Medium, and he's based in Sydney, Australia. So you say that when Modi and BJP won 2014 elections, 69% of people voted for somebody else. So he has a minority of vote. But my concern is that Hitler also got same minority votes. Actually, difference is just 1 or 2%. It was minority. How relevant do you think that point is?
I think the key. So there was Mom, you've talked well about some of those key messages I was trying to push, and the key point around that is to let people know that not all Indians and not all Hindus are for this Hindutva agenda. If you look at, again, those election results, as you rightly called out, on the surface, it looked like Modi was returned to power with, a massive mandate by increasing his majority in parliament. But in fact, when you think about people who voted for somebody else, it was, as you said, it was something like 63% of people voted for somebody else, not discounting those who didn't vote at all. So the people who are pro-BJP and voting on that sense are in only something like 25% of people. And so I think it's to give people hope that it's not all Indians and it's not all Hindus. It is a minority, and it's something that we can tackle.
So how a minority becomes so powerful to control the government?
So that's a good question. I think there are a couple of elements there. One is the political system in India involves the first past the post. And so where you have a player that has the most votes, even if it's not a majority, will win the seat. So it's not a preferential voting system like some other countries have. And so that has enabled them to get some seats. Secondly is they're not a regional party. They have effectively unified or attempted to unify the Hindu vote. And historically that had been fragmented across multiple regional parties, the erstwhile government of the Indian National Congress. And so they've done they're good at politics, I suppose is a good way of saying it. So they've channeled anxieties, they've grouped people together from a pan-Hindu agenda. And also they have a sophisticated, call it an IT wing of sorts, but operations in social media and whatnot to engage with the younger generations. And so they're a sophisticated political party and actor. And I think the other parties have not really caught on to that game, or rested on their laurels a little bit.
Well, I was thinking of avoiding the term Hindutva, not to introduce too much of India in our country.
My apologies.
But now you need to define what is Hindutva.
My apologies. So Hindutva it's an ideology close. It's almost a subset of Hindu nationalism. This sort of ideology of Hindustan for the Hindus, Hindustan being another name for the Indian region, and they have certain objectives, such as the primacy of the Hindu religion and their practitioners and their way in the country. Other things such as the integration of Jammu and Kashmir, which you've kind of alluded to earlier, the destruction of the destruction of a mosque and replacing it with a temple, which is a very controversial act in India some decades ago, or it's still sort of playing out. So they had very specific pro-Hindu agendas and some revisionist of history as well, to rewrite it, to sort of write out certain actors and write in a more Hindu-oriented interpretation.
Some of the, Hindu Americans and other Indians are using the term fascism about Hindutva. What do you think about the use of that term?
I think there is a lot of correlation around it. So again, it's a commonly, those two terms are said together often, because they are, in many ways, there is a personality cult around the Prime Minister Modi. There is obviously the primacy of the religion, Hindu religion. There are worrying actions in play where they are discriminating against minorities. Such as the Citizenship Amendment Acts, which we can go into later, but it basically preferences certain religions over others from a fast tracking to citizenship perspective when they're refugees. So, is it full-blown fascism? I'm not sure, but it is certainly on the way there, which is cause for concern. To your earlier point, when Hitler got 34% of the vote, or when he first started marching, people probably weren't as concerned until he got control of the system, right? So,
yeah. So, Kesh Anand, the concern which a lot of people have is probably, applying what happened 100 years ago in Germany and Italy. Both are different countries, different cultures, different things. But people are saying, a minority being able to gain power, but also has a militant wing. And in this case, they mentioned Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh or RSS. How much BJP is controlled by RSS?
So, there's obviously a big interplay there, right? And the RSS is widely considered to be the parent organization there. But I would say that they're not unassailable. And by that, I mean that whilst they have, certainly won so many seats at the federal level and many seats at the state level, 3 years ago, 70% of Indians were living under a BJP chief minister, so like a state governor of sorts. Today, 3 years later, it is about 48%. So they have suffered a string of losses along the way. And so people are wondering.
These losses happened before his victory of 2019, right?
Well, I think, I can't remember the exact dates, but they happened all through the year, if I recall, right through 2019, which probably comes with your earlier point about national opposition. But at the state level, people are looking for other options, including in his heartland. So there's an area of India called, I guess, the Cow Belt, which is, I suppose you could say, similar to the Bible Belt of the US. And the BJP lost many states in that region. And so, they've lost it in their own backyard. So they're certainly not unassailable.
So you are saying that cows are voting against them then?
people in the Indian Bible Belt, if you will, or the Cow Belt, have certainly rejected some of that messaging.
So you're watching Muslim Network TV. This is Imam Malik Mujahid, and we're talking with Kesh Anand, and we'll be right back after these messages.
My wife, she's a professor at the University of Cincinnati, who's Catholic, and by her watching and listening to our 3-year-old son watch Adam's World, she ended up taking Kalima Shahada. She embraced Islam because she learned so much about Islam and the other prophets. It really affected our life in a great way, and because of Sound Vision and Adam's World, we're Muslims.
I took my Shahada 15 years ago, and I actually am from a rural part of Ohio. And so I found the catalog for Sound Vision, and I ordered the tapes and the CDs and the books, and I used those, and especially for my little daughter, that's how we basically learned our Islam, and Islam entered our hearts through the wonderful works of Sound Vision.
Okay, assalamu alaikum, brother. I just want you to know that I love the Sound Vision website, that a lot of times when I'm looking for information, especially as it relates to homelessness, domestic violence, and women issues, I go to that website, and then I see what you've written, and then I copy and paste it, and spread the word, because the wisdom is there, so I can't do any better than what Sound Vision has already done.
Sound Vision is our survival guide. It is the organization that provides skills for Muslims how to survive and thrive in this community here in the U.S.
Assalamu alaikum, my name is Anam, I'm in 11th grade, and I grew up with Adam's World, and what it taught me was unity, respect, and love for the Muslim Ummah.
Adam's World is the greatest show ever made. Take me to the Kaaba, man. I love that puppet.
What was it like when you started this network out, when you started Sound Vision those many years ago?
After 9/11, one lady called me and she says, what is your channel which I can watch? And I say, I'm sorry, we don't have a channel. And you know what she said? She said, then how America will know about you?
SubhanAllah. Anything you want to say to the people who are watching? We had one sister who messaged that she grew up on Sound Vision. What do you say to the people who have been long supporters?
Thank you. Thank you. It is because of you we are able to do all of that. So the generation of Adam's World, you need to take it over for the next generation. And that's my invitation to you. To keep telling everybody where to watch. They can watch it on Galaxy 19 satellite, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV, or easy thing, muslimnetwork.tv, or our YouTube channel, or our Facebook channel. And with your help, inshallah, ladies, the one who called me, what channel should I watch Muslims on? Answer is here and now.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, it's your brother Zain Bika from South Africa. One of the first educational programs ever produced for Muslim children was the ever popular Adam's World series. The colorful and comical Muslim puppet stole the heart of a generation. Sound Vision will be releasing brand new episodes of Adam's World with the launch of a Adam's World app. Subscribers will enjoy new Adam's World episodes as they are released, as well as all the classic episodes of Adam's World. So visit adamsworldapp.com now to learn more, subscribe and enjoy new adventures of Adam and his friends. And let's keep helping tomorrow's Muslims today. Assalamu alaikum.
Adam's World. Believe me, there's a lot to see. Bismillah. Let's explore.
Will it be true, Kesh, that Congress party was essentially not defeated by BJP, but by the rise of the regional parties?
I would say the Congress Party has been, so Congress Party obviously has been the party of independence and has a long history in India, but their number one enemy, in my view, is themselves. So yes, there have been a rise of regional parties, but in so many situations, the Congress Party has been their own worst enemy. So, for example, some of the ideas there are there is an extreme form of nepotism prevalent all through the party, and so whilst they are a fiercely secular party, there are many people in the organisation, including the person who took them to the last two elections, who are effectively there by virtue of their relationships to people who were there before. So again, that example there, so Rahul Gandhi was the leader, I guess, of the Congress Party at the last two elections, and he's never held a cabinet position. He's never been a chief minister of any state. His qualification seems to be that his father, grandmother, and great-grandfather are also prime ministers. So I think you need to get over they need to get over the nepotism. And the flip side of that is you have many capable and highly meritorious people being part of the party who want to make a difference. But if they're not given the opportunity to move up, they will be disaffected and move to other parties like the BJP or to regional parties. And that is exactly what happened earlier this year. So there is a state in India called Madhya Pradesh with about 70-odd million people. The Congress Party had recently won that in an election, but due to some infighting, one of the young up-and-coming people in that party left and defected to the BJP and took 20 MPs with him, and so the government fell. And so whilst there is a rise of regional parties, the Congress Party probably needs to work on itself.
So do you think a number of voters for Modi's party actually were those people who were frustrated with the Congress not liberating itself to other people instead of sticking to the family business?
Oh, a great many. So many people would have gone to the polls and wanted desperately to have another option to not vote for Modi. But at the national level, there are a few other players, but it was really a Modi or nothing show. And so either they would, I don't want to say throw their vote away, but they would, vote for a regional or smaller party in a way to try and get away from it. But otherwise, if there's at least one person there with a plan and has some whiffs of Hindutva to them, but otherwise has, is a charismatic orator and appears to have a plan for the country, which then many people would have done that. And so if only the opposition, or the current opposition of sorts, Congress had a strong plan and were able to sort of sell that, I'm confident they would have done a lot better.
So is any of the regional parties, so whatever happened to Congress, nepotism and all that, so regional parties started eating up, and a national party, BJP, with a strong base of RSS was able to take over. And now you're saying that BJP position is being challenged at the state level, not by Congress, but again by the regional parties. So do you think there is a possibility of regional parties remaining a major player in the shifting national politics?
Absolutely, absolutely. And just to clarify, whilst Congress is down, they are not out. So they still have government or run government in several states in India. The regional parties are very much entrenched in some places, particularly southern India. So there are states like Kerala, Andhra Pradesh, and Tamil Nadu, where there is minimal BJP presence. And it doesn't look like they will be growing super strongly there in the medium term. So I think the regional parties are strong in their backyards, and so it'll be difficult for BJP to crack in and take over those domains.
So is it, earlier election in 2014, BJP formed an alliance with the regional parties to come in power, but this time they are on their own, right?
They still have some alliances. They are part of an alliance, but I suppose certainly for the House, they don't need it. They've won a majority in the House, so the lower house equivalent, but they still maintain some of those alliances.
So
but in Indian politics, they change all the time, these alliances.
So what's the hope for Congress, or it's going to stay as it is?
I think that's probably the big question mark in all this. So BJP is not unassailable. Most people don't want to necessarily vote for them, but what is the option? So Congress has an option to reform. There are many brilliant and hardworking people involved in the movement, but it's to enable them to do so. And I think they are slowly getting a lot of that as a wake-up call, but they need to move faster to bounce back over the next couple of elections.
So the idea that RSS is the real party, which has been there, which has penetration, which is well organized. I was reading in an Israeli paper, there is a whole lot they're saying their appreciation of Hitler, and originally there are scholars saying, leaders saying that we will deal with Muslims in India the way Hitler dealt with Nazi and all sort of stuff. How much of that is known to ordinary Indian, that RSS has this ideology and everything?
I think it probably varies. It's not a secret that there are elements in RSS that would have those views, but there will be doubt as to, is that the whole movement or is that a fringe element of the movement? Because they do involve themselves in all sorts of public works and charities and those sorts of things. But to your point earlier, there are strong components of the organization that have these extremist views. And so I think people are aware, especially when some of these people are in in positions of power. So there's the chief minister of the India's most populous state, I should say, again, has made all sorts of horrible comments. So I don't think people are not blind to it. And so it's just a watching brief, I guess, and how do they act to prevent it.
Yeah, just some of his comments are, dragging women from the graves and raping them. I don't know what type of imagination he has.
Yeah,
dead bodies, but he just but he said that before he was appointed chief minister, but the Modi went ahead and appointed him. So it means that those type of statements give him popularity and more acceptance.
I think it's pandering to the base, right? So I think, I would say that he's almost an Indian Trump in many ways, where some of these outlandish comments really gets some of the base really riled up. Again, that's not to say not all voters of that party have that necessary view, just as all Republicans wouldn't necessarily hold certain views or that Trump has. But you're right. So by appointing people like that into high positions, you are legitimizing them or normalizing their behavior, which is obviously very concerning.
Kesh, I like the way you talk, you keep the hope, but at the same time, you end up somewhat minimizing the the danger these people pose. Just imagine this. I mean, you mentioned he's like Trump. Of course, we are all in America, and Republican Party, but Republican Party does not have troops going around lynching people. I mean, I have seen photos of some of those lynching, and a police officer, a practicing Hindu police officer, who tried to stop a riot, and he was transferred on some accusation of beef eating incident, and he was shot by these people and burned alive. I mean, that doesn't Republican Party and Trump, despite all of their sophisticated, nasty rhetoric, don't do that. I mean, it's happening on the streets of India. I mean, it's I mean, one of the image I saw of two people hanging from the tree, just reminded me, if it was in black and white, of the South in USA about 100 years ago, when people will be lynched on the street. Now, black people still get killed by police and all that. That cannot be minimized. But Republican Party does not have RSS type troops. Well, now I sound a little bit like defending Republican Party, but I'm a little concerned the way you are keeping a room for these people.
Yeah, that is not my intention. I think, yes, perhaps that was a too long a bow to compare them to Republicans in that sense. But I think that the idea was that some of these behaviors are being legitimized by, when you have people in power making statements like that, it gives these extreme individuals, it makes them feel more legitimized, I suppose, is the concern. And so certainly not downplaying that at all. And as a result of all this, and I think as a direct result of the BJP and Modi being elected, hate crimes are up significantly against minorities, against Dalits, which are sort of the sort of untouchables, I suppose, within the caste system. So it's definitely a very concerning and worrying trend, especially coupled with not just extrajudicial behavior, but also some of the laws that are being passed that are outright discriminatory. So you're right. So I think obviously the Republicans are not doing that.
Of course, all comparison have this risk of. Tell me about. I'm a leader of interfaith and somewhat left to the center person. And I was speaking in Delhi, I thought, with interfaith group, and I said something in appreciation of Gandhi. Oh, brother, that was invitation to so much heated rejection of the appreciation of Gandhi. And there were Dalits among them, and there were people like me. So I came to know that not only some crazy people are celebrating the killer of Gandhi in today's India, but people on the left or liberal or interfaith and Dalit also very critical of him. So who is on the side of Gandhi?
I think it's an interesting one, because Gandhi is a very interesting character, because, I mean, apart from his achievements, a lot about what people know about him come from his own writings and his own biographies. And I think he's a character who's being examined a lot more in recent times, both due to the sort of revisionist movement of these BJP and Hindutva people coming to power, trying to sort of rewrite history in that sense. But also, I think to an extent, there's a term called WhatsApp University in India, and it's basically this idea of it's akin to fake news, basically, of armies of people creating fake, completely fake articles and commentary, and these things spread like wildfire. I myself have had some of these things taken down from sites which are completely fabricated, and so I think the confluence of things has created a lot of heat around Gandhi, and I think some of it may be worthy criticism, but like Gandhi is seen as a towering figure, and there are certainly other players who are part of the independence movement who should be getting recognition, or more so than they have. But yes, I think to your point, there is a lot of controversy around Gandhi, and also Nehru, who was the first Prime Minister of India, in the same way, subject to historical revisionism, criticizing things that happened. You know, these people are smart people in the fray, and made decisions, the best decisions they could at the time. But there are all these armchair experts now going back and trying to, criticize some of these things.
Just about a couple of weeks ago, I was invited to deliver a keynote speech, of course, through Zoom, to this group which controls Gandhi Ashram, the place where Gandhi used to live. It's also called Gandhi Ashram in Delhi, where he has his temple. And he was fascinated by making different samples of how people make toilets in their homes. So all that huge property, very unfortunately run down. So Gandhi's grandson was there, and myself. I think we were 2 or 3 people. And I was shocked to see there were just 25 people attending that. Of course, one can say that, probably they didn't publicize and all that. But Gandhi's grandson is speaking. I was introduced as the chair emeritus of the parliament, and they booked me up a while ago. So it seems that Gandhi, of course, the BJP people, when they come to America, Modi and all that, they wanted to still use the name of Gandhi, but Gandhi does not seem to be a dividing force any longer. And I mentioned that, if you're the, they also publish there used to be a small magazine Gandhi used to publish. So they still have kept that magazine alive, although I don't know if anybody in India knows about that and get to read. But Dalits in America are getting pretty, some of them, I would not say all, pretty aggressive, if that term could be used. And several statues of Gandhi, actually half of all statues of Gandhi in America have been taken down in the last 3-4 years, because they say he while he gave us a name of Harijan, God's children, he did not fought against the caste system, which requires somebody need to be at the bottom of it. How valid is that, or are there people like that in Australia as well?
I think in terms of, so that the Dalit situation is complex, I suppose. And there were Dalit heroes involved in the independence movement.
And other people.
Exactly, and they had strong disagreements with Gandhi on some of these matters. But I think more broadly, India at that time, and the subcontinent broadly, went through a massive social reform movement. And Gandhi was a major player in that, but not the only player. To the point that in certain parts of India, they dropped caste names entirely. They encouraged inter-caste marriages and all these sorts of things. And so it was a time of tumult, and not just focused on independence, but massive social reform. But of course, those sort of historically discriminated and marginalized people are still not at parity but there were great strides made at that time, and it's a continuing journey. In terms of Australia and criticism, like Dalit criticism of Gandhi, I can't really put my finger on anything in particular. I have seen broader criticism of Gandhi and era from Australian Indians. I mean, they could have been Dalit. I didn't ask them. I don't know their particular castes in that case, but there is, amongst the diaspora in Australia, there is certainly a good dialogue or debate of opinions, because some are definitely not anti-Gandhi, but they are spurious of those things. But encouragingly, I have seen a lot of the rhetoric push back against some of that. So it feels like, certainly conversations I've seen, both in person and online, you're starting to see, I wouldn't say left-wing intellectuals, but thinking people on the left of the spectrum trying to organize and push back and change the public conversation around secularism and Gandhi and all these things, which are worrying. So there's a small sunflower sprouting out through the snow, I suppose, is the way I'm thinking.
Tell me this, how is when 50,000 people gathered in America for Modi, and Trump also showed up, that became something, and people started questioning how in the world, in America, nobody gathers like that, even for anything other than games, ball games, they get people of this type. So it became a question, and people came to conclude that it was the RSS operating in America. And recently they were marching in Texas with bands, and men, a band in the front, and men dressed in a particular way, and then a woman dressed behind them, and then children behind them, and they have these sticks which they were carrying. So people consider that there is RSS presence in America. And some professors are substantially threatened. At the University of Chicago, where I went to school in Chicago, a professor wrote a book. It's about Hinduism. It's not an anti-Hindu book, but it's she collected these classics from Mahabharata and different Ramayana in different places. And so it's sort of a classic Hinduism, which is not probably the type of thing which BJP or RSS might like to people to see, but it's a classic stuff. And she could not speak at the University of Chicago without bodyguards.
Yeah, wow.
Same thing happened just a few months ago to a professor before the COVID-19 in New York. People are afraid in America of speaking up against these people. Now, how do they operate secret open? I have no idea. But do you have any idea if RSS is organized in Australia as well?
I think, so certainly nothing like that I have noticed or seen, and it doesn't make our papers or anything like that. It could be because of a couple of factors. The lack of presence here. One is the critical mass of the Indian diaspora in Australia. So obviously there are a great many more in North America. And so, with the critical mass, you have the ability for these sort of groups to sort of infiltrate and start building up a presence. I think the second thing is Modi has visited and engaged heavily with the Indian diaspora, particularly in the US. And so it's almost, and as we said earlier, he has this sort of cult following and celebrity status. And so that riles people up and gets them, it's almost like an automatic recruitment drive, right? So that has not been as strong here. And so the elements around threats and militarization of Hinduism in Australia is not something that compares to what you've described in the US.
In America, Indian reporters writing from India in Washington Post, New York Times. I don't think in my 40 years in the United States, I have seen as much negative press India has gotten because of what is happening in India. So this is coming to the horizon of people here. Do you think Australian media has the similar type of articles and information of what is happening in India?
Probably not so much, to be frank. I think the focus here is other regional players. So the rise of China is probably a bit more relevant or close to home, so to speak, about what's happening here. And so in line with that, Australia is aligned, I say, in a manner of speaking, with India militarily in the form of there's an organization called the Quad, which is like a quadrilateral. It's 4 countries joined together to do military exercises in what is effectively trying to contain China. So less of the specter of right-wing Indian Hindutva is being raised here, and more some of the sort of East Asian actors.
Well, here also there is a lot of rhetoric about against China and trade war and what they're doing to their Uyghur population. But news-wise, there has been consistent news about what's happening in India as well. Tell me, I was in Hollywood for a function of where there were directors, producers of television and dramas and serials and comedians who were present. And in that gathering, one Indian lady asked me, Indian American, of course, what do you think about Modi? I said, oh my God, where it is going to take me now? And when I open up, she opened up like crazy. But one of the, I'm criticizing Modi, but one of the things she wrote, I'm unable to convince my parents about that. I mean, I'm probably her parents' age group, and she was a very young person, maybe in early 30s. And she was saying that I'm unable to convince them, and they are just dead in support. So what do you see? I mean, is there some generational thing here?
I think in part, but I think another thing that's underplayed about Modi is in the previous governments, you had like with the Congress Party and whatnot, you had sort of people who were more English speaking, Western oriented type people, and Modi's kind of made it, I don't say cool to be Indian, so to speak, in terms of he speaks primarily in Hindi. He wears his religion on his arm, and so he's a person that relates or resonates more to many everyday Indians than the previous governments who kind of might have been perceived as elites. And now whether that's right or wrong is a different thing. But I think there is an allure there to many people towards somebody who they identify with maybe a bit more in some respects, without giving full thought to what that implies. Because someone might speak a bit more like you and have the same faith, they might have some extreme views, which could take you down a very dark path. So I think that's a factor that people don't fully appreciate when they barrack for him. It's the downstream consequences of what that could lead to.
So while Congress is divided, what's wrong with such a major size of middle class, sophisticated, educated people? Don't they see the liberal ethos being destroyed, the secularism which India is so proud of being shattered? And so what people who are, I'm absolutely sure there are huge amount of people who are upset in what's happening. but why they are unable to become a movement or a recognizable power?
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head in the last sentence there, Imam. It's they haven't been able to organize effectively. That's the issue. So I mean, if you go back and look at the election numbers and number of people who vote and whatnot, 80% of people in India are not voting for the BJP. That's a significant majority. But without being able to organize around a party or a movement, it's hard to get out there and vote and get yourself a national government. And this is for all their faults. This is something the BJP and the RSS are good at. They can mobilize, they can get cadre, they can send these, create these meme engines, they can pressure people, they can do all these things as a sophisticated organization. And so the secularists in India need a way to do that more effectively. And I think that's probably the rub of it. And they have made some progress, as we said earlier. The BJP, or the saffron wave, if they say, has rolled back from 70% of the population to less than half. But they need to organize better and more holistically and consistently with each other.
Are there some efforts at the international level in diaspora for people to organize properly?
Sorry, I didn't hear the first part of that.
So are there some Hindus for human rights or Hindus in Australia and other parts of the world who are concerned about it, and they are developing some network which one can attach some hope with?
Yes, there certainly are. So I've certainly seen many in the diaspora community, lots of little like Facebook groups and other communities writing big political essays and statements and things. So these are things that I wasn't seeing so much a few years ago, but certainly now it's a lot more prevalent. There are collectives of people who are of intellectuals and when I say intellectual, it's probably being a bit over the top with it, but like educated people, professional class folks who are mobilizing around it and trying to push back on the narrative at a grassroots and a citizen level. So it is definitely happening, but it needs to be faster and it needs to be turned into a political movement, because whilst these people can influence the social conversation, you'll still need to anchor it to a political party to be able to take control of the government reins of government, right? So I think that's the next step.
I mean, it was, I felt a lot of hope when that poor girl was taken in a bus and raped brutally and got murdered. Whole country stood up. So people of goodness are out there. Similarly, there was still probably Muslim were in majority against those discriminatory laws, but they had allies and they were standing up. But now they're in prison and nobody can do anything about that. So does this power of the state being used in a way to suppress any opposition or any possible future threats?
I mean, obviously, if you have the control of the state behind you, you can implement a lot of these things. But I think, whilst there is certainly a threat to the country's secular identity, there are pushbacks. So, for example, those massive rioting or demonstrations against the Citizen Amendment Act, which we kind of mentioned earlier, which was discriminatory and basically anti-Muslim. And it was right through the country, massive protests. And that was very recently as well. The judiciary as well there's a bit of a push back and push and pull with the government. So there are checks and balances in the government, but democracy is a very fragile thing, right? And so we need to make sure that they are able to continue to stand in the face of this onslaught from the BJP. And and I guess is to, I mean, I want to quote the Obama quote from Twitter, to get out there and vote. But Indians need to do the same thing. They need to vote. Last time round in 2019, something like 67% of the electorate came out to vote, which is an amazing number for a non-compulsory voting country. But more needs to happen. They need greater numbers, and they need someone to vote for. And that's the big gap that we.
Well, Kesh Anand, thank you so much for being with us. We took a lot of your time. You need to have some rest, unless your coffee is still acting up.
Thank you for having me.
Does anybody tells you in Australia, go back where you came from?
Not since I was very young. Yeah. But I do get the, do you like it here?
I landed from the airport and I was tired early in the morning, getting back to my office in downtown Chicago. And a lady, here in escalators, people stand on the right, and people walking stand on the walk on the left side of the escalator. Yeah. So everybody was doing that. One lady was blocking that. I requested her, would you mind moving to right, because I was getting late for the office.
Yeah.
As I came out of the escalator, she moved, and I was about to exit the building. She said, go back where you came from. I was so upset. I came back and I said, listen, you came here first. She was a white lady. You go first, then I will go back as well. So if somebody tells you that, there is nothing wrong. You're going back and taking over the country there in India.
Maybe I can join one of the political parties to help.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Kesh. Truly appreciate that. Truly.
Thank you, Ma'am, for having me.
Yeah, the great job what you're doing, keeping hope. I mean, that's what it's all about. People get worried and drowned and hurt themselves, hurt others. We need to keep hope. And you have pointed out the right things that, say small organized group in the absence of a viable opposition. And I know for sure there are a whole lot of people who simply don't care for their ideology, but they thought that will be good for India as compared to the mess which they were facing before. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And thank you, Sherdil Khan and Dr. Abdul Wahid, for producing today's show. You're watching Galaxy 19 satellite and at Best Muslim Network there, and Amazon Fire TV, Raku, and also our own website, muslimnetwork.tv. Peace. Salam.